Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, how online retailers can use the SEO and PPC Growth Engine to dominate page one of Google without AI, LLMs, or big brands stealing your traffic. Now, before we get into it, I just want to say thank you for signing up and thank you for turning up. And we've got a cracking webinar ready to go. So let's talk about what's happening right now. AI and retail giants are dominating search results. Brands like Amazon are squeezing the mid-market, and AI tools like ChatGPT and all the other LLMs are increasingly intercepting customer journeys. If you're an e-commerce owner making £1 to £10 million a year in turnover, this is affecting you, whether you know it or not. You're not growing like you used to. Your PPC budget isn't getting the return it once did. And SEO, it feels slow and overwhelming. Sound familiar? Now, before we dive in, let me promise you this. By the end of this session, you will know exactly how to dominate page one of Google, understand how to compete with brands 10 times your size. This is the one that gets a lot of people. They think it can't be done. And how to stop wasting your marketing budget and invest only in what actually drives scalable growth. Now, once you see how this process works, you'll never look at e-commerce growth in the same way again. Let's have a little look at a few of our clients that have been working with us for a while. Now, Jim, through the framework that we're going to step you guys through, Jim and the other guys, but Jim specifically, was able to be on track to push through the £3 million barrier this coming year and is on his path to the £5 million success. Tom, he's ranking for some ridiculously competitive terms, coming up against the B&Q, Amazon, Screwfix. I think we've all got those big Goliaths in the industry that we're up against. And then we've got Chris. Now, Chris was really struggling with profitability, working a full-time job at the time, but really struggling with profitability. And we've really turned that e-commerce store business around, where he's had record-breaking months over the last year. So when Chris approached us, there was a problem with consistency with his orders. You know, week in, week out, he wasn't sure how good business was going to be. So we soon layered in the framework that we're going to talk to you about in a few moments. And then fast forward several months, he's got the regular consistency on a weekly, monthly basis, breaking through the multi-million pound barrier, which meant that then Chris can be a bit more selective with what he does day to day in terms of his full-time job that he still does a few things with, but very much now he's having multi-six-figure months, you know, very, very good months in the season. His products are actually radiators, so obviously there's quite a seasonality to those radiators, but a lot of consistency, and he sleeps very well at night. So there's three very specific examples that have used our framework without wasting the budgets on ineffective strategies, wasting time doing the wrong things, that's a big one, and also hiring a whole marketing team or using hours of internal resources. So how did I get here? I'm Richard Hill, the CEO of one of the UK's leading e-commerce growth agencies with over 20 years of experience helping brands go from invisible to unmissable. 15 years ago, I started my own e-commerce business with just me and a clunky computer. Back then, building a website was like building a house with no tools, and digital marketing felt like wizardry. I spent a fortune on agencies to try and drive traffic, but the returns were minimal. I started digging into SEO myself and using the earlier versions of what we now call our SEO Catalyst framework today, and I started to outrank my competitors. Within a few years, my business was turning over £12 million a year. Word spread, people started asking for help. Before I knew it, I had become the go-to guy for SEO, an accidental expert really. I even wrote a book called Local SEO. I actually wrote this book 14 years ago. Now, as CEO of leading e-commerce growth agency, I've leaned into this expertise fully. I spend a lot of my time at the top SEO and PPC conferences around the world, not just to keep up, but to spot the patterns others have missed. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and the same mistakes still show up. Brands with great products and budgets wasted because their content isn't optimized. Their Google shopping feeds are a mess, and their keyword strategies haven't evolved since 2010. Every time I see it, I want to bang my head on the table. That's why I felt like I had to step up. I built structured, repeatable frameworks, rigorously testing across industries that help brands dominate page one and maximize their ad spend. Now, these frameworks aren't based on buzzwords or hacks. They're built on data, psychology, and ruthless focus. We've helped brands go from invisible to industry leaders. And while others in the digital marketing space keep chasing algorithms, we stay one step ahead because we focus on what actually works. This clearly does work, as we are a Google Premier partner, won various awards including Best UK E-commerce Team and the Sunday Times Best Place to Work. Now, Tom that I mentioned a minute ago, this is his website ranking above Screwfix using the framework I will cover today. So Screwfix, for those that don't know, is the biggest firm in the UK of its type, very, very similar to Home Depot in the US, with over 900 stores nationally just here in the UK. So to outrank those guys, it's a massive, massive achievement. So if you're on this webinar, you're probably not seeing the growth in your profit margins year in, year out. You're frustrated with the lack of growth, and you're frustrated with the sea of information and what the hell to do next. Imagine doubling your revenue, improving profitability, and sleeping better at night. Now, before we go any further into this, just to make sure that you're in the right place, this is for you if you're an e-commerce store owner doing at least £1 million in revenue per year. You have a very, very growth mindset, and you're tired of the wrong methods and following a lot of misinformation online. And this webinar is not for you if you are looking for quick fixes in your business. If you're a service-based business, this framework is very much focused on e-commerce. So if you're a service-based business, this framework and webinar is not for you. And you're doing a revenue of under £1 million a year. We're going to walk you through 4 critical training points that can transform your growth trajectory. Number 1, the 5 growth mistakes even smart brands make. Why your Google shopping feed is killing your conversions. Number 3, fast-track SEO, ranking without the wait. And number 4, why we'll just hire someone isn't a strategy. Now let's get into it. Okay, so part 1, the 5 growth mistakes that stop even the smartest brands from increasing their revenue. Mistake 1, seeing AI and LLMs as a threat, not an opportunity. While others panicked about ChatGPT and other LLMs, our clients gained an advantage. So at the moment, we've got a sort of first mover advantage. And it's like a bit like the gold rush back in the day where things have changed. So they've changed dramatically, and ChatGPT and LLMs are not going away. They're getting stronger, stronger and stronger. You know, maybe 6 months ago when I was on the train, I could see people on Google doing their thing, but now I can see them on ChatGPT. And that's the same for our clients, your clients. When you think about how they're searching, you know, that landscape has changed. It's changing more and more and more and slanting more and more and more to the LLM. So it's a massive sort of first mover advantage to you, to our clients. And it's like, how can you get in those indexes to get ranked in ChatGPT? And we've seen again and again and again, like a first mover advantage where quite a lot of e-com stores are panicking that they're losing traffic. But where are they losing that traffic to? And quite a lot of it is to these LLMs, to ChatGPT. So I've got many, many clients that where we've actually managed to gain those rankings, those listings within ChatGPT when people are putting in certain queries for certain products, and it's made a massive difference to them. Mistake number 2. But we see a lot of times you're not feeding enough information into your Google feeds. So there's a huge opportunity with feeds. Every store with multiple products should have feeds pulling out and pulling into Google Shopping, into different ad platforms. But what normally happens is those feeds are just basic, very, very basic, more of a click, click, click. Right, we've got a feed out of our store, depends what platform you're on, but ultimately it's going to pull a data set out, push that data into your merchant center. But the reality is it will be the same as everybody else's data. And that is a big problem. And it's where you can have a big advantage by making sure that data is very thorough. So when I say thorough, it's then looking at the different types of data that you can add. So if you think about the products that you sell, but just as an example, if you sell clothes, we've got color, we've got size. Now, if you're selling men's trainers, and you've got sizes 8, 9, 10 in, but you haven't got sizes 6, 7, and 12 in, do you really, really want to be bidding on size 12 trainers when you haven't got any in stock? So having the data and bidding based on stock availability, bidding on around seasonality, and all those things, all that information needs to be in the feed. So manipulating the feed in a good way and adding in additional data is absolutely critical to get in front of your competitors. And mistake number 3, not tailoring content around actual search behavior. That's a big one. The reality is when your customers are searching for your particular products and go to Google, for example, they're going to see different types of media, whether that's category pages, blog pages, guides, short form video. And it's basically looking at what is ranking already Google is giving you the clues. It's giving you the sort of facts of what is ranking for different types of search terms, different types of intent terms. So it's really looking at the actual search behavior of customers and seeing what Google is already favoring in your niche. Number 4, believing you can't compete with brands that are 10 times the size of you. Now, this one I really love, because the reality is no matter what niche you are in, there's always a bigger player, a household name, and you can come along and we can come along and sort of carve out a slice of what that big player's working on. So there's always going to be a big brand that's ranking for some of the terms. But when you start looking at some of the subcategories and how you as a smaller player can come along and take some of that niche, it's very, very exciting. And then mistake number 5, hiring junior internal teams instead of listening to the real experts. It's an interesting quandary, this one, because of course, as a growing e-commerce store, you maybe look to make that first hire. But I've seen it time and time again where, of course, it's nice to be hiring, nice to be expanding the team. But the reality is there's quite a few challenges where you're hiring sort of junior team that are maybe trying to cover 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 specialisms when it comes to digital marketing. We're talking about SEO, PPC, and just PPC alone. You've got the data side of things, you've got the feed side of things, you've got the commercial side of things, you've got the platform side of things. To find somebody that can do that, just that one piece, and then you get them up to speed, they start to understand your business, and they're fairly ingrained in your business. And then they hand the notice in, which is quite challenging. Then you're sort of back to square one, and we see it time and time again. Just one of our clients, slightly different, but about 2 months ago approached us and said, we might need a bit more help. We've got 6 people going on maternity. So obviously they've built a nice big team, but unfortunately things happen. People leave for 9.5 months or so, and then you've got a bit of a challenge. If you're making these mistakes, you're leaving money on the table. It is as simple as that. But here's what actually works. Let's tackle PPC first, specifically Google Shopping, and look at 3 costly shopping myths that are killing your conversions. The Google Shopping reality is that most feeds are broken. We see it time and time again. This is usually because there are 3 misconceptions around PPC. Misconception number 1. Highest bidder always wins? Definitely not. The reality is that most people that bid the most just burn through the cash and stop running their ads. The amount of clients that we've spoken to that have said Google ads and Google Shopping do not work, and that's quite often because they're trying to bid the most rather than strategic bidding based on profitability, a thing called POAS, not just ROAS, return on ad spend, but profit on ad spend. So if you've got a catalog of products with 1,000 SKUs as an example, you may have a pencil in there that's £1, but then if you've got a whole box of pencils and a sharpener and a whole case and everything that's £35, naturally you can bid more on a certain product than another product that's really low end. So it's making sure that the bids are relevant to the categories and subcategories. But then there's this thing called ad rank, and it's really important that you're not just overbidding on products and really burning through the cash. It is the quickest way to burn through your budgets. Misconception number 2, set it and forget it. Biggest issue, massive issue. So you set up your feed, you get your products pulling through, you connect it to your Google Ads account, you run it, and you forget it. Basically, what we're saying is you've set it up and then you've let it run, You've basically accepted the results at that time, and then you maybe adjusted something in the ad account. But the reality is that's the start point. That is the start of the ads campaign, the shopping campaign. What you've got to do is then look at the data. You've got to look at the actual feed and look at how you're going to adjust things in that feed to improve. You're going to look at the orders that have come through and the certain products and categories that have had activation, that have had orders come through, and then we're going to make adjustments. And this is the problem. A lot of people, they set it and forget it. They pull the data through, they link it up to the ad account, they let it run, and then usually a month, 2 months, maybe 6 months, ads doesn't work. The ROAS, the POAS is poor. But this is where a lot of people make that mistake. They just set it and forget it. Whereas like anything, marketing-wise, we've got to be looking at the data, making adjustments, and we'll find that actually, if we do set it and forget it, it doesn't work. But the reality is there's maybe 80% of that product catalog that are doing very well. There's 20% that needs to be taken out, put into another campaign, put into another feed, and just dealt with slightly differently. And maybe the bids need to go down. And the reality is, within a catalog of hundreds of thousands of products, there's going to be a lot of profitable products in there, but there's going to be some unprofitable. So we've got to look at how we're going to section those off, how we're going to categorize that, and how we're going to isolate certain products. So definitely do not set it and forget it. Number 3, more traffic equals more conversions. Big misconception. So this one is literally the difference between success and failure. Driving tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of visitors at a crazy cost with very, very little conversion is a short circuit to complete failure, to probably go and bust in reality. It's getting that balance right. We've got to get the conversions, we've got to get the right ROAS. So each business is slightly different, but ultimately, if you're spending a lot more to get conversions than the profit that is in the products, then you're going to fail very, very, very quickly. So it's not about more traffic. It's about getting conversions at the right price and paying the right amount for that traffic. And that's where it's getting that balance between ROAS and POAS is very, very important. So as you can see, in isolation, each one of those myths can have quite a devastating effect on your campaign, on your progress, on your profitability. But add them all together and you've got a real problem. Those 3 different things. If you're doing all of them, compound them, you are almost guaranteed to fail. This is where the profitability framework changes the game. With this framework, feed granularity is super important. Now, this is a story about a client of ours called Rimmer Bros. So Rimmer Bros is a very exciting brand that we've been working with now for just over 2 years. And when they came to us, they had a feed that didn't work. It was actually not connecting. It wasn't working. So literally hundreds of thousands of SKUs that weren't populating and weren't driving revenue. So what we did, we obviously got that fixed very, very quickly with our feed tech. And then we restructured the campaigns looking at the keyword profitability. So what we did, we restructured those products. And because they had so many products, and when you think about car spares, if you're buying a washer blade for £5 or you're buying a new engine for £10,000, obviously in terms of profitability, margin, what you're willing to spend on certain products. So segregating those higher value products, making sure the feed is working, that all those additional products that weren't coming through, that weren't showing or working in the feed, adding additional data and structuring those campaigns so they're showing when people are searching for them with the right intent key phrases. Really made a big difference to those guys. Ultimately, we're all here because we need to make profit. We need to be able to pay the bills. And to be able to do that, we've got to be selling the right products at the right ROAS or POAS. And that was a big focus for these guys. So tens and tens of thousands of pounds worth of spend per month, but spending it in the areas that was giving them and us better ROAS and POAS. And we increase revenue and reduce spend with the profitability framework. Now, do you remember Jim from a few slides ago? We introduced Jim and his team to the profitability framework and prioritizing the feed. They're now more than doubling their turnover, and the owner is driving around in a nice Range Rover and growing his business sustainably. Now, there's probably a bit of a theme there. The feed management advantage is what I like to call it. And there's fundamentally quite a lot of challenges with feeds. And usually it's because everybody's doing the same thing. And if everyone's doing the same thing with their data, with their product set, what advantage do you have? Well, this is where you have the feed management advantage. So we've worked with a lot of different brands over the years, and different brands, different products get disallowed, included, excluded. So it's really important to be monitoring those disapprovals. Depending on the types of products you sell, disapprovals will come and go all the time. So monitoring that is a big thing. So we've helped a lot of brands in the pet niche, for example. Now, pet products, they have ingredients, and certain ingredients are not allowed to be advertised, and certain ingredients are. And then sometimes when you're maybe on the borderline of what's allowed and disallowed, quite often these products get disallowed. And if you're not monitoring the disapprovals, then a lot of your key products can go out of stock. And then fast forward a month, you think, oh, we've had a bad month, we've had a bad week. Because when you start diving into the data, it'll be because maybe your top 5, top 10% of products were disapproved 3 weeks ago. And then, okay, we get them live, but it's a bit too late. So setting up triggers, setting up alerts for those sorts of products. But really, it's just monitoring those disapprovals and making sure that you've got this sort of 99% rule where the 99% of products are approved at all times. When we're talking about product sets that have got something for £1 and something for £10,000, that framework, that feed management advantage, you've really got to make sure that data is manipulated. So going back a few months now, but we were selling hot tubs. And a hot tub is obviously not a pound product. Hot tubs are going up to £33,000. So making sure that that data was structured in a way that we knew that we have a lot of margin to play with and a lot of high value profit, like on a 30K hot tub, we're making £8,000-9,000 for the client. So the way we structure those campaigns is very different to a brand that is selling pencil cases that are £10, £11, £12. So it really relies on a commercial understanding of different products, different product sets, and the nuances in the different industries. So the next thing to think about is SEO, which brings me to part 3, which is about fast tracking SEO and ranking without the wait. There is a common SEO misconception that small businesses just can't compete. Another is that SEO is a one-time task. So you optimize all your content, all your products once, and it will drive your traffic forever. So this is a big misconception. You do the work, you do the SEO side of the optimization for those products, for those categories, and then you're done. Big no-no. The reality is that Google's index is changing. The way that people search is changing. The way that people research different types of products is changing. So you might well be ranking very well now when you do the work or soon after you do the work, but it's obviously monitoring those rankings, monitoring that traffic. It's really about freshness when we think about your product data and your categories. You've created an incredible product category and it's ranking really, really well. Along comes a competitor, researches their competitors, which is you, and sees that you've created a really, really good page. They then mimic your page, create maybe a better page, and then you start to drift. Now, you're not going to disappear, but you're going to start to drift. But over a long period of time, 6 months plus, you will start to disappear. So this is where you've got to be monitoring, and that's what we always say. You've got to be sort of really, really checking those key categories, subcategories, products, those top sort of 80-20 of the product set, and checking those and comparing them on a almost weekly basis. And then, right, okay, do you know what? We've slipped in this area. We need to be working on that one. And another is that more keywords equals better rankings. Absolute fallacy. So the search engines have got a little bit more sophisticated than 10 years ago when it was okay to sort of stuff more keywords on pages, add additional copy that really was just a repeat of various keywords and variations of keywords. But now that really goes against what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to achieve better rankings by having targeted content that is very specific to a set of keywords and a very specific keyword, and then building topics around that. So you've got to be careful with this one. You don't want to be placing the keyword dozens and dozens of times on the page. It's got to be very organic. It's got to look like a human has written it, because a human should have written it with a little bit of help from AI maybe. But if you're really stuffing keywords onto a page nowadays, it's a massive no-no. And there's another misconception that any link is a good link to. So links, very important, but not any link. That's the reality. Google's very, very smart when it comes to link building. I hate to use the term link building, but it is still absolutely critical to ranking e-commerce stores. When we think of when Google has to decide who to rank high, obviously we've done some really good work on the website, on the categories, the products, the subcategories and so forth. And that's the sort of work that we can control with a consistent workflow, with a dedicated team that are going to work on those products. But then Google then has to look at other areas, and those votes that you've got as an e-com store from other stores, but from really good places on the web that are authorities in your niche. So, for example, if you sell car spares, and we'll talk about the car spares one again, if you've got a lot of links from a lot of sites that are nothing to do with car spares, and they are in different countries to your website, they're not really going to help you in terms of link building. So you're getting numbers, you may be getting, oh, here we are, we've got dozens of new links, but they're not relevant. One very relevant link from a car enthusiast site that's maybe from the same country where you're based is going to be worth 20, 30 links on random sites. So link building still very, very much, needed. Link building stroke digital PR, they sort of cross over, but you don't want loads of links from random sites. Why these beliefs are genuinely keeping you stuck. Introducing what we refer to as the Catalyst framework. This framework uses the iceberg principle, where the strategy and research behind your content sets the foundation for your success before anything is even written and published. The Catalyst framework prioritizes category page content. When you think about your e-com stores and all those categories and subcategories, they are huge drivers for rankings. Nearly every single e-com store out there has a box standard category, and category is the key here. The Catalyst framework is working on those category pages. But when we think about those myths, that do something once and forget it. No, we've got to keep checking those categories, making sure that they are getting adjusted based on what is in the index, how well you're doing, who's coming up as a competitor that's maybe copied your categories. What keywords are we focused on? That second myth, the keywords that people search for your particular products are going to change. So you've got to be monitoring those keywords. And then we're talking about internal linking, backlinks, domain authority, the importance of domain authority, and answering the actual questions that your customers are searching for. This is the absolute killer move, is driving links to those categories. So we've taken a very basic category, we've fed it a lot of extra additional information. So it's an absolute top tier category. It's got a lot of extra information in there. It's focused on a narrow set of keywords. So it's very, very specific. You're outranking some big national players, and then you're building links to those pages and to those specific categories. Very, very powerful. So if we step back to LocksDirect, who were using the Catalyst framework, they went from absolutely nowhere to page one on Google, competing alongside B&Q, Amazon, and Screwfix. So Locks is a perfect example of an implementation of the Catalyst framework. So they came to us with a very sort of standardized category structure. We restructured those categories, looking at what was ranking, and continuing to track what was ranking, adjusting those categories, adjusting the content on those categories, updating the keyword research on a monthly basis. And then very, very soon, they outranked these big players. And another client called Rackzone, who's based in Ireland, ranked number one for shelving above IKEA using the frameworks. Now, to rank above IKEA on a national level is a huge undertaking, but it isn't that difficult with the right framework. And as I said all along, to outrank a big player like IKEA in this instance, it takes a very focused, very strategic outlook and then a deep implementation. So by implementing the Catalyst framework, by looking at the products, looking at the category structure, looking at the additional information that those pages need, looking at what shelving brands are ranking for shelving in the specific region of Ireland, and then reverse engineering an element of that, driving very deep links to these categories, meant that quite quickly they outranked IKEA for the term shelving. Now, part 4 today is talking about in-house versus hybrid. So now let's address a major pitfall, thinking one hire can solve all your problems. One person simply cannot match an agency's expertise. It is as simple as that. When stores start to scale, they then have to decide, they're going to have that one person in-house, or are they going to work with an agency? But we like to look at things a little bit differently, and I suggest you do too, where it's a combination of what we refer to as a hybrid model, where it's your in-house expertise working with a set of experts, and then you're getting a mix of both worlds. There are 3 viable models. Freelancer for temporary tasks. I think that's absolutely viable. Full in-house teams for early stage testing, and what we refer to as the agency hybrid when you're serious about growth. Our head of growth here at Econ1 recently spoke at the IRX Expo, an e-commerce conference with over 4,000 e-commerce attendees, on a panel where the topic was exactly that, agencies versus in-house. The panel was complete with well-established and fast-growing brands, all of which embrace the hybrid model and use agencies in areas where they know they don't have the expertise. They say this model helps their internal teams learn too, and has been a fundamental part of their growth and shift in mindset. You also got to think about the learning advantage. Agencies help internal teams to grow and learn. So as a sole marketer in a business, or even the business owner, or you've got a marketer or two within the business, it can be quite a lonely place trying to navigate SEO, PPC, feeds, shopping, platforms, email, and so forth. So having an agency there that you can draw on, that collective expertise of their teams, can really help your teams to learn. So we see it more as a hybrid model and more of a helping each other, where you might have thought about something in your e-com store's marketing stack and just a quick conversation with the team at the agency potentially that can help your team, then propel to that next step. And other things to consider are the staffing security, no recruitment gaps or coverage issues. We have spoken with companies in the past, many companies, where they have decided to use their resource they have in-house, internally, rather than partner with agencies like ourselves. Then 12 months down the line, they need our support as their internal resource is either no longer available or people have moved on. With a marketing agency, there isn't the worry of recruiting again or filling gaps when it comes to staffing issues. So you can see now this is the answer. The hybrid team scales faster, they learn faster, they outperform internal only setups, especially during high growth phases. So when you combine a very thorough setup of your Google Shopping feed, making sure that each category and set of products is very profitable, you link that in with very thorough optimization on your SEO, looking at where there are opportunities ranking against some of the big boys in the index, and then taking advantage of the way that search has changed, the way people are searching for things with ChatGPT and other LLMs. You set yourself up for a very scalable growth. And that's what Jim, Tom, and Chris did. And now they're seeing profits, not just traffic. Imagine this. You finally build that new warehouse you've been dreaming of. Your good months today will look like rookie numbers. You pay wages without refreshing your bank balance every day. 2 years ago, you were stuck at 3 million. Today, you're on track for 10 million plus. You've got to remember that market conditions won't wait. There is money sitting on the table whilst you wait around and stay where you are, doing what you've always been doing. There are two paths: continue struggling or move forward with this proven system. The choice is yours, but choose now. If you want to move forward from here, I'd like to invite you to speak to one of my team. There are 3 steps. Here's what happens. We'll understand your current strategy. We'll analyze your SEO and PPC performance. Then we'll map out a clear, actionable roadmap to scale your store. This isn't a sales pitch. It's a real diagnostic to give you a clear roadmap. Here's the client I mentioned earlier, ranking above IKEA for the term shelving. Remember that one? And remember Jim, who I mentioned earlier? Well, here he is in the Google Shopping, and the 3rd Google Shopping listing with his CSS partner and his 550 stars pushing through. The results we get speak for themselves. This is another one of our clients' projects. And in just 4 weeks post-launch, we had 28% increase in organic sessions, 44% increase in organic revenue, and 49% increase in Google Ads revenue. There are so many more success stories. We're very selective about who we work with, but if we're a good fit, we'll show you how to grow with confidence. There is a link below to book your call. Your next steps are to get that call booked. Once you've done that, you must complete the simple application form. Your call will be cancelled if this isn't completed. Shouldn't take longer than 2 minutes. Okay, let's have a quick recap then, shall we? You know why your current efforts are working. You've seen how the growth engine gets results, and you know how to take the next step. Your store can rank on page 1 of Google. You can scale without wasting budget on ads, and you can sleep better at night knowing the strategy is sound. Thanks for joining us. Now go book that call and let's grow together.